Support for this show is brought to you by novel Till the Bitter Endemic. What if there was a happy ending to a pandemic? Perhaps an unexpected love story. After Daisy gets thrust into mandatory quarantine for an infection she can't explain, it's up to her to unravel the truth as to what's behind it and what she can ultimately do to escape it. But she can't do this alone, and that's where she finds not only herself, but a very special person that opens their heart for the betterment of their survival. Find out how in Till the Bitter Endemic. Available now on Amazon in all major formats.
Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Art of the Beholder, a show dedicated to all things eclectic in the world of art. I'm your host, Novo Day, and today we're going to be talking about art and gaming, focusing on the seminal horror masterpiece, Silent Hill 2, specifically its 2024 remake. To hash things out, we're once again joined by the Otherworld version of Philip Church, and that is Mr. Chilip Purch. Mr. Purch, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I didn't know what you were going to do with that.
I'm not either.
I was like, is he going to make a weird, otherworldly bobblehead nurse sound, or is he just going to be himself and be like,
well, because then even
how are we going to approach this one?
If I made up some ridiculous character voice off the cuff, I would feel very, very tempted.
I know you like improv, but I was like, this is probably going to be the hardest curveball I throw at him.
And then part of it was just that, okay, so if I do that, I have to commit to that voice the whole time.
Yeah, you got to do. Yeah. No, well, you can go back and forth.
I don't want to ruin what could be actually a fantastic.
We could go into regular. We could go to regular Silent Hill, and
that's
then
true.
Back
they
to
do go back
Otherworld Silent Hill.
Sorry, guys,
yes.
Minor spoiler there. But yes, actually, and funny enough, a very similar version of what you called me was once an accidental nickname. My brother meant to write my name down for me on like a school form, but he got distracted and he wrote my name down as Philip Chilip.
Philip Chilip. Ooh,
my family got a laugh out of it, and to this day, every now and again, someone will refer to me, be like, "Wait, was that you, or was that Philip Chilip?" And so it's a fun joke. So I do have other personalities, supposedly.
But guys, we get regular Philip today too.
You get both.
We get Philip Chilip, we get Chilip Purch, but also
he got the end of the year BOGO.
It's
great that you took advantage of that holiday deal going.
It
into
was a discount.
Strong.
Could not pass it up. And
buy more to spend less. You know,
that's a good segue to talking about. Yes, Philip, we've made it. It's 2025. We made it, baby.
Right.
And there's so much we got to give the world.
I expected, but
I was just happy. Oh God, I was so happy to say goodbye to 2024. Dear Jesus. But listen,
felt nice
guys,
to do a whole lot of nothing at the end of it. I felt like that's what I deserved.
This is season 4, 2025, the first episode of the year, and it's one of our Philip. It's one of our favorite things because let's give the good people a little history lesson on our show before we give a history lesson on Silent Hill 2.
Video games full of psychological horror and violence?
Well, there is that. But also, this game has been a part of our history. So we talked Team Silent, the OG. We did a whole franchise show.
Our big fans, Team Silent. We talked no, I wish.
No, they're huge fans of the show. We should have them back on. They love us. So we did, Toonday. God, all of them. So
many big fans.
That reminds me to tell you.
We're so blessed. That was the only good thing about 2024.
That reminds me to tell you, it is Chapel, Rowan. It's not Chappelle. It's Chapel. I apologize to you, good people. It was Chapel the whole time. It was like the usual suspects. It was him the whole time, or her the whole time.
I like that once, just you saying that, I'll just admit, it could not be a better example of the Novo Philip dichotomy where we're on the same coin but different sides. You went usual suspects. My dumbass brain went Scooby-Doo. But I was like, you know what?
Ooh, take the mask
reveal
off.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, there's the real person. It's like, okay, you know what? We both kind of thought that.
We mess up all the time. We're very professional, but we mess up all the time, and sometimes we cut it, sometimes we leave it in. But good people,
you can leave that there.
You were right. It was Chapel. But anyways, so we talked Silent Hill, the franchise. We talked Team Silent and Silent Hills and Silent Hills with an S, the PT version.
Yes, PT.
And then we talked Silent Hill 2 Remake in some after hours. We gave it a little spotlight, but after I played it, I realized, dear God, we just gotta do a long form topical. Let's do a deep dive on this
It deserves it.
it deserves it. Exactly. Because here's why. Let's tell the good people why. So Silent Hill 2, the OG, was not afraid to ask not only the big questions, but some of the biggest on life and death, morality and ethics, and even good and evil, sometimes blurring the lines on what is and what could be, sometimes within the concept of right and wrong itself. So,
And in a video game in 2001.
And this is 2001. And so this is why it has gone on to be considered one of the greatest video games of all time. And somehow, Philip, Chilip, the remake did the impossible by making it even better. And guys, that's why we got to talk shop today. Now, before we can discuss, guys, of course, we all need a little background. The original Silent Hill 2 was released on September 25th, 2001 on the PlayStation 2. It was developed by internal Konami Team Silent, as already joked about, and published by Konami. Notable team members include concept and monster artist Masahiro Ito, writer Hiroyuki Awaku, and music composer Akira Yamaoka. Its remake was released on October 8th, 2024 on the PlayStation 5. Back again to support the remake was Masahiro Ito again and Akira Yamaoka. But the main development team was by Polish video game developer Bloober Team and published by Konami Digital Entertainment. So there is a lot to discuss, guys. But before we do, we're going to take a little break. Stay with us.
The best way to say thank you and to support us is by donating to the cause. In doing so, you'll be able to help us help fellow artists, creatives, and colleagues, promoting their work, the community as a whole, and why we got into this line of work to begin with, to not only make art, but also shine a light on our peers and the gems of the world. For all the hidden ones and the not so hidden that make life worth living, because if we can make things even a little bit better, it'll all be worth it. But we can't do this without you. So please, donate today. And remember, even a little goes a long way to build new bridges, new worlds, and new opportunities. Link and details on how can be found in the show notes below. Because together, we can do anything.
And we are back, Philip Chilip Purch, to do the dang thing. Now, guys, I'm looking at you, Rouse. Before we dive into this we got to give some spoilers because you know me. Guys, you know Novo. I'm definitely going to begin at the end, okay? There's going to be spoilers, heavy, thick, gooey, oozing, flesh rotting.
The second you talk about anything in this game that is basically past the intro, it's spoilers.
It's
dense.
Total.
There's a lot in this game. Even
it's
like
total spoilers.
The fact that even the opening cinematic of where he's kind of like looking at and like sort of doing hand gestures in front of his own face, even that like has become like a meme in, I think, even before the remake was really announced. I mean, this game it's legitimately packed full of memorable stuff, and ever since it first came out in 2001, again, it's just on steroids, but in a good way now.
The best way possible. So with that being said, let's get into it. So the story, let's talk story first, like we always do on these kind of topical shows. So the basic premise, if you do not care about our spoiler warning and want to just hear the deets, so the basic premise of the story is this. It's an anthology piece where we follow main antagonist, yeah, I said it, James Sunderland, as he searches for his deceased wife after receiving a letter from her that reveals she's somehow still alive and waiting for him in the titular town of Silent Hill. Ooh, spooky.
She's been dead for 3 years. They were supposed to go back one day. They went there together one time. There's stuff.
There's a lot going on. But before we talk about, I want to have some fun, Philip. Before we begin with the end and talk about a certain VHS tape that James has to watch. I want to talk first impressions because I want to talk about the first time you played Silent Hill 2 in 2001 or 2 and how you felt, what you went through. What'd you think?
Well, given I
Well,
was
you do that a lot. That's kind of your catchphrase. Well, Allie has a catchphrase too, and Tyler has his T-Book tangent corners. But do you have the well?
I just want everyone to know there is a lot coming your way. That's my
that's the warning. That's
that's
okay.
that's my heads
That's
up.
your spoiler warning.
Exactly. You're about to get a lot of very real, somewhat thought out.
Let's get real. Give it to us.
Yeah,
Give us the
I
deets.
genuinely don't know that enough of the imagery and metaphor
The effed
made
up
it into
God, the effed up imagery. Like
pretty much, yeah. I don't know that I was that smart when I was 15.
Imagery.
Yeah, I it just wasn't as overt. I wasn't as mature, as I could be, even just a few years later, and then this many years later too. But I mean, yeah, this was like over half my life ago at this point. So I was young. I remember being super creeped out. I remember being enthralled by the plot. Always trying to figure out, what was going to happen next. It engulfed me at the time. I remember just going in and getting sucked into it. And I kind of just finished it the once and was like, I can't do that again. I did not want to
replayed it.
I really didn't. I didn't care about getting all the endings. I was not quite the sort of trophy hunting gamer nerd that I have become. I've only become more serious in my gamerisms. But yeah, I didn't have as much depth back then, and therefore didn't see the depth in the game. I could not see that which I was lacking. And while I respected it and it always stood out, I played through again all of the Silent Hills at some point. I think it was only Silent Hill 4 that I ever did an entire second playthrough of, because that one did grab me, and that one did come out multiple years later. And I think because of the impact of the previous Silent Hill games, I think I was finally, with Silent Hill 4, The Room, ready to do it again. So it definitely made an impact, OG2, on me back in the day, but not the level that I think a lot of other people kind of took it both then, but especially since the remake was both announced and since its release just months ago.
On the other hand, I did replay it numerous times, not because I wanted all the endings or that kind of thing. I would usually just play it. I would normally get the exact same ending over and over again, to be honest. I played it over and over again because I remember being somewhat addicted to the experience and the story
of smothering somebody with a pillow.
And being fascinated with just the beats of the story, because it was nothing that we had ever really seen before. And what's crazy is it was a very scary game for its time, and it did evoke that emotion in me, but it also was strangely alluring, and I found it fascinating. Just on the story, I will say this. But I will agree with what you were saying with that naivety kind of feeling of like, well, I was just a kid. Yeah, I didn't quite understand, because like I thought it was interesting to see the story beats play out when we see Maria being killed over and over again. But I had it was years and years later for me to learn that's like, oh, Pyramid Head was this manifestation of his guilty conscience, and
that stuff was so lost on me
like
at the time.
Exactly. So much of that was lost on me, and I feel like when people were kind of ranting and raving about the game over the years and solidifying it as one of the greatest games of all time is because of those things, the things I didn't even realize. And I went down the rabbit hole of reading an excessive amount. And I did that for this show. I was eating, drinking, and sleeping Silent Hill 2 stuff.
That explains those weird texts you sent me.
Yeah, I get that a lot. And all these things I've been sending you in the mail.
Oh God, this haven't come yet. Jeez.
But I think that is a testament to when games finally crossed over to become art. Because if I would say, I would premise it this way: if 1998, 1999 was really the year that games became more cinematic, Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, I feel like the millennium is when they started to perfect that and ask those big questions that no other game was asking, and really challenging the player not only aesthetically and with an emotional response, but with like life-changing questions. Like, to this day, we're still thinking about all of this. And it really is, after we talk about the big questions of the game, it is apropos for our times. And I have a perfect, shining example of that. And I'll go to it in a minute.
Ooh, way to tease that. Set it up.
But yeah, but first, let's begin with the end. So after we learned that James was the killer all along, that he was the one that killed Mary, I think the biggest question there is, how would you deal with the end of your life? Because James is written to be sympathetic, and it creates a moral ambiguous question. Because she was dying, because she was essentially being tortured through this illness, she was in sheer misery. Did James kill her for mercy? Was it a merciful killing to put her out of her misery? Or is he just a murderer?
One thing that I think ultimately works towards generating good conversation and plunging into the material as well as into your own psyche for things like this is that there's a little bit of material and lore and background that implies that Mary and James were legitimately a normal, happy couple. There's I don't recall anything that really screams that there was some kind of major abuse or like that there was any kind of gigantic mistrust, that there were major issues. So it's interesting that, they were
No, it
married.
was the end of the life circumstances.
Right. And so
Like,
it's like,
how
okay,
would
so they
you
were,
react?
yeah, and so so they're
That's
at
the
least
big
married.
question.
And that and everybody's relationship is different, but a lot of times when you're married, it really comes certain bigger questions end up coming out of like, let's say something happens to me, what would you do? I like that they didn't take some kind of cop out and leaving one last note or something that you could find that's like, "Oh, Mary always said, 'Don't let me suffer.'" Like that could have been such a stupid way to handle it. I like that they didn't go that route and left enough of both, okay, they seemed happy, nothing was wrong, but that also there's no, they were perfect for each other. It was romance from day. Well, it's a normal. It's just ambiguous and gray. It's just it's an any man kind of problem, which is a lot of the appeal in a lot of video games is either you're going for the power fantasy or you can connect with it on the any man level. And this is an any man / every man level of story of, yeah, how would you handle those things? Because yeah, Mary, I mean, again, cancer. Are we going with cancer? It seems like it was cancer, but yeah, I feel like the whatever it is, it is very much implied that Mary became a sort of a different version of herself. That she was, and they make it very clear that she was lashing out. If you're just diseased and sick enough, A, what do you want for yourself, and B, how much of both watching someone else suffer, the person you seem to love most in the world, can you handle? As well as how hard is it on you? That's kind of a twofold thing, and that it's one thing just to watch somebody suffer horribly, but then when it also comes back around onto you in very undesirable ways, again, in no way condoning anything that James did, just saying people crack. Things like that could easily break a person. Lesser things than that have broken people and made them do atrocities. So,
Well, it gets harder because there is little Easter eggs, or there's very minute forms of dialogue that indicate that she may have been asking for that.
right,
Like,
like
I
that
just
could be
want to
implied.
die. Yeah.
Right. I genuinely feel like that was meant to be implied. That's they did such a better version of with better voice acting and a slight
Oh my
tweaks to the writing and
God.
the story to make
Luke
that.
Roberts, bravo. I
Oh,
like the guy
and
that played him
everybody.
was so good.
Mary and Maria, especially, to make that, because there's that conversation in the long hallway right before the end where you can listen to all of it or not, but it really
Yeah.
shows a gamut of emotion that can go along with somebody dealing with the phases of death. They're accepting their own death, and that's more than most of us will luckily ever really have to know how to handle. So I feel like it was beautifully done, and I appreciate that there's a lot of ambiguity in it because I don't think it's one of those situations where just, like, oh, a bank robber, oh, whatever, I would totally punch him. And it's like, no, you wouldn't. You'd be scared poopless and you would get on the floor like everyone else. Like, we all think that we're a hero and we want to do something cool. And then when situations come along, we're like, wow, I wish I had done anything. And I think that's kind of this. It's just one of those, you can think you would know what you would do, but there's no way to really know the truth. And God save you if you ever have to get in that situation and figure out the truth.
Well, I think that's the beauty of the writing, because when you really think about it, that is the
I was
most
supposed to
important
really
part.
think about this?
Really think about it, Philip.
Oh,
Chilip.
shoot.
That's the other world version again, guys. That's why he's not doing it.
That's why I suck.
So that is the most important thing, is the question, because everyone is going to have a different opinion. There's not necessarily, I mean, there's definitely a legal standing right answer, right? Murder's murder. You shouldn't murder people. We can all
Don't
agree
kill
about
anybody.
that. Don't
Obviously.
kill people. That's
Disclaimer, guys. Like I just said, I don't condone it, but let's just make this very clear. Don't kill anyone.
Don't kill anybody. We learned that as
Don't hurt
children, but it becomes complicated when we're dealing with end of life circumstances. So when you're dealing with your own morality, your own ethics, your religion, your maybe lack of religion, what class you're in, what family structure you have. When you add all those things in, this is when it gets so complicated. And the game is essentially forcing you to start thinking about those things, because the reality is we will all be faced with our own mortality one day or another. And if we're not thinking about it now, we'll be forced to think about it maybe when it's too late. So this is when a game like this definitely transcends into art.
And actually, to bring things a little bit back more on specific topic, one thing that I also don't know that I had the clearest idea of from the game was how long, like where all, because obviously a lot of it talks about being in the hospital. That's where Mary met. That's where she met Laura. So clearly she was in hospital for a while because diagnoses happen, treatments happen. And then when things became more end of life and terminal, was James the main caretaker? Was there hospice? Was it both? So that's something else that I do wonder if the game could have fleshed that out, because if you did have to be the main or sole caretaker and just sit there and just watch your loved one die a little bit more every day, again, that could break a person. That could crack someone's brain and make them do something like
caregiver strain
murder.
caregiver strain is a real thing, and this actually does happen, that people get pushed, to these limits. So it's a real thing, and that's why I think thinking about it early on in life is actually quite healthy.
Yeah, because that just even from the through the lens of dignity, how was Mary going to feel about this? Of oh, my husband who used to think I was the most beautiful person, blah blah. And she talks about like, I'm so ugly now. These are real things. This is all. I'm sure they did their research. I'm sure they looked into all these things before writing this game and making it real, because this is real stuff. That especially if you are sort of having especially depending on if you can afford care and things like that, of just, okay, so cool, my spouse is going to watch me die a little bit, I've never felt more disgusting, and I'm just going to be dead in 4 months. Did Mary say just do it, or I don't want this?
Right.
Or like, would she have fought harder? Would she have changed her mind once things were happening? But of course, like, she resisted, but James didn't let up.
Right. And we'll never know really, which side was the game trying to make you lean towards. That's up to you. That's up to the player. That's up to the viewer, the audience.
My take on that is, given that they did what they could to make it a mystery and paint James as sympathetic up until the end, I weirdly think that that's them stating the inverse. The game's belief is basically that James is a murderer, that it's basically is a kind of a selfish murder. Whereas I do think that their point was still to leave the question with the viewers/players, with the gamers.
But he was written to be so sympathetic. Like,
right,
you
I think they're
want to be
trying
on the side of James.
Well, but
that's what
I think
makes
that's
it
them
so ambiguous.
overcompensating. That, you know what I mean? Like, if that makes any sense, I think that's them overcompensating for the fact that you are technically supposed to find out at the very end of the game, he's the one. I'm just saying that what I believe their purpose was to intentionally paint a sympathetic thing, so that gut punch at the very end is all the more of like, no, James is a
Interesting.
murderer.
Well, good art
Big
is
sharp
open to
left.
interpretation.
Exactly. That's all the fun and why we're here to talk about it.
Right. Where my interpretation was, it was always a purposeful story narrative arc decision, because to me, Silent Hill is not only a place to for cults to try to resurrect deities, it's also a cursed town that tortures people with their own guilt and creates their own version of hell. Whereas for James, our main antagonist, yes, think about it.
That's twice now.
He's right in the middle, and that's for the player to decide which side the needle actually lands, and that's why his Silent Hill is fog, right, and mist,
Gray,
right,
gray area,
and yeah, that's up to the player. Whereas when we start to bring in Angela's Silent Hill, her version of hell is truly a fiery inferno, where hers is much more. She is on one end of the spectrum, because it's so much more easier to side with her, because she was abused almost all of her life, and so she one day decided to kill her abuser.
She also snapped, yeah.
Right. And when I was talking to Del Rio about this, she immediately sided with Angela. She was like, well, that was not murder. That was like defense. She was killing her captors, her abusers. And I'm like, again, in the eyes of the law, that's still just murder. That's where the moral ambiguity, the beauty of Silent Hill 2 and their moral ambiguous questions come into play, is like, was Angela really right here? Or was she also just a murderer like James? And then that brings us to Eddie, who's on the other end of the spectrum, where if you actually look at some of his deeds, I'm not sure. Right. He is, his hell is icy, an Antarctica. And I found that so fascinating, and that we couldn't have actually realized this better until we had the capabilities and tech that made Silent Hill 2 Remake. But again, with Eddie, he may have, he does kill a dog, and that is,
and the guy.
That is a cardinal sin. I think he maimed the guy. I think he maimed the guy, but killed the dog.
Oh, is that he only shot him in like the knees or something?
And ran off.
Okay.
But this one was,
maybe it was that the guy was implied to have died from that, but okay, I thought he killed both of them, but he definitely was like fine with killing a dog.
He's starting to snap in Silent Hill and kill the looped versions of James, actually, if you're willing to get really deep into some of the lore.
But even that is curious, because originally that was deemed just a shortcut to not have to make that many character models, but they kept it for the remake. So that still begs the question, is that intentional? Is the loop theory real? And we'll get there in a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think it's canonical. I think it is fun though I want to say in my own version of of canon Silent Hill lore that it definitely is, because I find it so
I understand the appeal of it. I don't believe it is, because I guess as supernatural as the town is, which is really dope, and I love the fact that not both, all three other Silent Hills are way more to the culty ritual side, and this one is pure psychological, with the fact that it takes place.
This is an outlier if you really think about it,
and it happens to be the most popular and well remembered.
Yeah.
So I feel like that kind of stands out.
But let's not get too far away from Eddie, because Eddie's another hard one, where Angela, it's easier to side with her, and it's easier to side against Eddie. But if you look at some of his crimes, they're not as bad as James and Angela's.
There's no confirmed murder of a human.
Right, but he's such an unlikable character that you still want the town to punish him for his guilt of what he did. But he was also this bullied character. He was abused in a way.
That's the sympathetic angle with him, is that he makes it very clear that everyone has made fun of him for, I guess, his just overall body shaming type of stuff his whole life.
He was kind of snapping, breaking at the seams, until eventually he did snap and do some very horrible things. But did he have to die for it? Again, it's not about a lot of the narrative arc finales. It's about the question it brings.
True. And then another wrinkle with Eddie's thing is the fact that he seemed perfectly content. In fact, he was kind of almost bragging about how he killed that dog and shot its owner. Whereas James has this trip through Silent Hill because while he has guilt, it's repressed and he needs to face it. And Angela has very clear guilt, and they make it very, very clear what all of her stuff is, but she still personally feels the guilt. So, what I'm curious about is the fact that Eddie says this town called to you too. So, Eddie felt the call. Nothing about what Eddie says or does implies that he has guilt. And yet, what is the town acting on then? What is Silent Hill actually going on to say he deserves it? Because if he's not sitting on a lot of guilt, then why would it call him there? And again, just I'm in no way saying that killing a dog is in any way cool. I love dogs more than probably plenty of people, but there's just obviously a difference between killing a dog and killing a human. But granted, he did maim a human, so it's interesting looking at it from the psychological aspect of the town calls to the people. The people clearly harbor guilt. Well, in Eddie's case, did he truly harbor that guilt?
Eddie is deceptive because, I think a lot of these feel like clean-cut cases, but when you really dig into the lore and the narrative backgrounds of the characters, it's really hard because he's on the verge of wanting to truly kill someone. He tries to kill James, and James has to kill him in his defense, right? And that's when James actually has to face him truly
that's
murdering.
What makes him feel
right. That's like him like truly murdering someone because he feels like he murdered someone, even though it was in self-defense technically. There's some reason to believe that James didn't quite completely feel that way, because he didn't even want to really do it. He was kind of thrust into this situation. But again, this is where maybe Silent Hill is playing as the puppet master. That is sometimes its final one is just to either kill the person or at least torture them eternally. That's why I like the loop theory so much, because that would be truly terrifying if he was stuck replaying these events over and over again. Regardless, again, it's the questions that they ask that becomes the most important, because it's going to make you think about things like you've never thought before. And you may say to yourself, well, yes, we all have to deal with our mortality. And this was a game that was, a story that was made in 2001. How is it really relevant for our times? And because it asks very timeless questions, I said that the game is very apropos, because we have just we're still dealing with a very moral ambiguous question, because an assassin not too long ago killed the CEO of United Healthcare. And the entire nation, probably the entire world at this point, has been going through that same struggle. Like, is this just murder, or is this justice for all the people that someone in his position has denied care for, therefore vis-a-vis killing, right? Like he has killed millions and millions by denying care that they needed, profiting from it. And so is this just vigilante justice at the end of the day? People are really having a hard time with this question, because a lot of people are siding with this vigilante assassin.
It has made waves. I think the guy got what he wanted out of it.
He sent a message.
Yeah.
He sent a message.
I think he accomplished exactly what he set out to accumplish on more than
just
one
like
level.
I'm gonna tie it back in, just like the writers of Silent Hill 2 did for us. So we're not going to spend too much time on the current events of the big questions. That's for you guys to decide. But I want to start talking about the similarities and the differences of the OG Silent Hill 2 versus the remake, and how the remake made what we thought was already a masterpiece that much better. Just chef's kiss.
Cherry on top.
And a lot of it was done by the motion capture of the actors and their actual ability to really emote on screen. So this was truly like playing out the movie version of what Silent Hill 2 always should have been. And that was done by, or as already stated, Luke Roberts playing James Sunderland, played by Salome, Gunner's daughter, our apologies, who played Mary/Maria, Evie Templeton, who played Laura, Gianna Keel, who played Angela, and Scott Haining, who played Eddie. I think they really, I will say that I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I think, luckily, since we spent so much time with James, I thought the motion capture, the acting, how he portrayed this role was pretty much perfect. I think he knocked it out of the park. And because you could, even when he wasn't speaking, because of the motion capture and the animation, I was like, man, he is hurt. Like, you can feel the pain on his face, you can feel the struggle in his eyes, you can feel the that he's shaken with the quiver at his lip. It is just something that was done amazingly, and that feeds directly into the gameplay. Now we get an over the shoulder perspective instead of the
fixed angle,
fixed cameras, tank control kind of things, and that helped with the narrative beats. The graphics were spellbinding,
insane.
I want to take a minute actually to talk about. I remember when I was in the apartments and I went to the other world for the very first time, and I was like, "Oh my god, they nailed this!" Like I was captivated by the art of it, but also scared of what lurked behind the corners. Like, they did it so well.
The environments were incredibly well done, to the point where it really did feel like they had the perfect amount of inspiration from the original, but also kind of made sure to follow through on what the original itself was attempting to make. Because if you get too faithful, you're almost doing it a disservice. So they nailed the feel of the places. They were harrowing. And one of my favorite things that I feel like if I'm going to throw it anywhere, it'll just be in like a sort of a graphics section, technically. The level of detail that they put,
it was spellbinding,
into stuff that didn't even seem to matter. That, like, if you don't have a 4K large monitor, and if, as well as possible, like video editing stuff, you maybe wouldn't even notice. But how the record that you glue back together, for instance, there's it's like
that's the
666
very first
records
level
or something
we did.
The stuff on the back of a vacuum in the shop windows, so things you literally never have a chance to see. You don't go in that shop. There's no way to look at the back of that vacuum, and the level of detail of the entire model, but the fact that even it makes a reference to the fact that this is kind of like an afterlife, or is in touch with afterlife-ish stuff,
their
specifically citing hell.
Yeah,
it's insane. So the detail put into the world, because that is also what is so memorable, that even from Silent Hill 1, that, okay, this place is already creepy, and then it turns into like the other world Silent Hill, and then you do your pants.
Absolutely.
The whole time. It was terrifying. Even I played the game through multiple times. I got all the trophies, all the endings, etc. So let me tell you, even though I got used to where things sort of should be or will be, it did not make it any more pleasant.
I need to make a confession, because even though I played the OG, I played all of them. Well, the first 4, I definitely got off the wagon when Team Silent was disbanded. Quick T-Buck tangent corner. It felt like your favorite band got a new singer. It's that feeling. Like, as soon as I tried one of the Silent Hills after 4, it just wasn't the same. So I actually quit playing them after 4. And
as did I, actually. They looked
stupid. but speed up to
I'll be a
Remake,
jerk about it. It looked stupid.
But speed up to Remake. I even though I knew that the main beats were going to be there, I still was so terrified. I was filled with horror. I was genuinely scared to boot up the game, to play it, that it took forever to beat, to get to the end. And so I would play it in little chunks, like little 30 minutes and hours, because and my wife would make fun of me. She's like, "Are you not done with that game? You bought it like a month or 2 ago." And I was like, I'll get to it. But the truth was, I was genuinely, of all of the new things they put in, on all of the new puzzles, all the new graphical choices, all the new character designs, like I was genuinely scared. And I will say, on my initial, I need to also state that I was wrong with in our after hours show when I was talking about it. I talked about how much of it being a faithful remake, or it being a faithful remaster. This was truly a remake. It was from from the ground up. Once I got done with it, I was like, once I really truly realized how much, to your point, attention to detail and character design and expansion of the dialogue and the layout and the level design and the puzzles and the enemies and the AI for the enemies and the music and the difficulty settings, when you put all those things together,
the new encounters.
Yes,
even just the things that they added as their own flair, as beyond just improving 400% on the original stuff. They didn't just do the original stuff. They got to flex a little bit.
So yeah, the original enemy roster is, we have the lying figure, the mannequin, the Mandarin, the fleshlet, Pyramid Head, of course, Abstract Daddy, Bubblehead nurses, and technically Maria. But of all of those, the ones they redid, that I want to say, I want to say this to the blooper, like, guy, gal, maybe team, who like raised their hand and said, you know what we should do with the mannequins in Toluca prison? We should make them like spiders. That terrified me to my core, and I think whoever came up with that deserves the Nobel Prize in horror.
That area is horrifying for many reasons, and after getting through that one time and realizing to complete the things that I wanted to do would have to do that a couple more times, I went back. I just started sprinting through that area. I was just like, I'm not going to dwell on this. I need to get through this hell. It was awful.
It created our
once
own
again,
hell.
It did not get any better the second or third time or anything. Like, it's nuts in there. The Toluca, the prison specifically, is arguably the most horrifying, because it's
like
still
when you have to
weirdly
turn the lights on and
tangentially
they scamper,
realistic.
the spiders scamper away with the lights on. You're like, oh god, I have to run or
And
walk
you
down
can
this
hear them.
hallway. Yeah, like clicking and clacking.
The fact that you're just like, I just killed 3 of them, and then you hear a noise, you're like, are you kidding me? It's like, do they have a
right, and
nest?
this is where it was, masterpiece theater evolved. Already, like, I think that's the beauty of art. Even when you look at a masterpiece, and especially in this medium, there are opportunities to make things can be better. I know a lot of people complain about the remake and the remaster and all this stuff, but in this medium, there are games that just, they weren't ready. They didn't have the tech back in the day to really be fully realized, and now we do to most extents. And Silent Hill is a perfect shining example of, like, when it's done right,
It's the
done
opposite of
right.
the Star Wars prequels.
Hey, people love
The
those.
situation was the same, where the technology wasn't there and now it was. This is like having learned that lesson, and they pulled it off with this one incredibly well. Even beyond all the other things too, that, speaking of, one of the things that always made Silent Hill very Silent Hill was the multiple endings, as I've referenced numerous times already. So they even got to add more endings for this.
Yeah, it's everything they could possibly think of to make it better, they did. Yeah. And they actually implemented it and executed it quite well.
It's seamless. It would be hard to tell if you weren't super familiar with the original. Maybe you wouldn't really know, because everything feels like it fits. And even if they hadn't been able to flex and take some creative liberties and add stuff, it would have been amazing anyways. It's just that much more amazing that the commitment and reverence and deference due to the original was legitimately, this was not a job for this team. This was a calling.
Absolutely. Yes. That was
welcome to 2025.
I think
this is Philip Chilip.
I think that's a perfect place to end that segment. So let's before we tie a bow on this, let's talk the future some more. Because, Silent Hill 2, OG Silent Hill 2, 2001, already went above and beyond to create a new a new bar for art.
For severely mentally scarring children.
Art and video games, yes, me included. I think I was 16 when I played it. And it influenced, it has such a legacy. It influenced 20 plus years of horror titles and game design and and story and narrative arcs and asking the big questions. We wouldn't have probably ever got like The Last of Us and those big questions in that game, those morality questions. If it
Silent
wasn't
Hill 2 walked, so those could run.
Exactly. So the big question now is what's the future going to hold? Probably not only for this franchise. I'm excited for more remakes. 1 and 3 definitely could use it. I don't even know how 4 would look in a remake. 4 is such an outlier in and of itself. It's really a trilogy of games.
4.
I know we talked about this.
It really is more that 1 and 3 are two parts of the same direct story, and then 2 and 4 are also the other pieces. So in that way, it's almost more like a trilogy. Yeah, but in a trilogy of anthology, since Silent Hill 3 is technically a continuation of 1. Like the girl that went missing in 1 is the main character. It's the same cult. Whereas Silent Hill 4, there's culty and supernatural stuff, but it's not. It's removed, as is everything completely in Silent Hill 2. The culty stuff is there. You read about the town, its curse, etc. That stuff still matters. Yet James's thing is more standalone. So I think that's just yet another strength of this franchise and what 2 was able to do to it to boost that ability to just world build.
Well, I think what I'm getting at is right. What I'm getting at is the hope that if there was a Team Silent version of a Silent Hill 5, like what's if they kept going,
Yeah.
And so now that begs the question.
There's a current batch of Silent Hill
right
on the way.
We have the blueprints for remakes, and I know someone like Bloober Team or whoever Konami chooses next will probably do a good job because now they have the blueprint with Silent Hill 2. But if Bloober Team was given the reins to make a true Silent Hill 5, not an Origins or effing, some other weird side story no one cares about, Homecoming or whatever.
Rain, something about
pouring. If it was truly a Silent Hill 5, I really hope that they take that magic, they create an original story, and I hope it's anthology style like this, and they give us something brand new, still with that soul of Silent Hill, the other worlds, the occultism aspects, but give us a brand new story we've never seen before, but it still has the soul of the original games, and that's what I hope the future holds for us all.
I'm very curious about what is coming for the franchise at this moment, because they have very big shoes to fill, and if they could bring some of the respect and notoriety back to the core part of this franchise, that would be epic. But I would have loved to know what Bloober could have done in a slightly different situation. But I'm glad that at least they stepped up and showed people how doable it is, and what it means to make a fantastic game. This is like a new benchmark. The game was excellent all around.
I think that's a good point. It's a good benchmark, and I'm excited for the future of the Silent Hill franchise. We may get a Silent Hills with an S. They could ask Kojima to come back, and Junji Ito and Guillermo del Toro.
I was going to say freaking Del Toro. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would have been the dream team. But we can still hope and pray, and we'll see. We'll see. I doubt it, but we'll see. But until then, guys, all you have to really, especially if you're new to the franchise, this is a perfect beacon of a start. So before we find out what the future holds, guys, you get to play Silent Hill 2 Remake. So with that being said, for the good people, let's tie a bow on this bee. And Philip, tell the good people why they should not only play the game for just, gaming's sake, it is still a game, but also for the experience and study it also as a piece of art.
The game does, or what other people try to do across multiple other genres, but all in one, in that to play off of what you pointed out earlier of Silent Hill 2 OG being a huge part of the huge movement of games to become more serious, more cinematic, legitimate art. Did they deliver a good video game? Yes, just in the same way that Resident Evil was also good, because there's a lot of similarities, as we also said. Those things were sort of contemporaries of one another, and that does show in the pure gaming mechanical perspective. But Silent Hill 2 really forced people who might have almost been using games to avoid more serious things and to take a lighter step back from what can be very harsh realities. The things that we all do need to think about and will be faced with at some point to a certain extent of this life or death, mortality, morality play, this big crazy commingling of these extremes going on throughout the game, brought what could have been a brilliant novel or even a fantastic movie to a genre that made such waves that it did inspire movies. And I'm sure, at least a certain number of writings and novels, as well as other video games. And then it was so good, it made its own remake happen. Like, that's just how good this thing is. It is a 20-something-year-old game. That's not the most common occurrence. So it speaks to itself that its ripple continues to spread this long afterwards. It is a testament to what games can offer in general on an insanely just philosophical
Know thyself,
area.
Socrates
Yeah,
level.
I think it's some of the most philosophical and just ponderous that the gaming really has ever gotten us to get to, and that it really broke ground back in 2001 when it was new, and it's done it all over again now with this beautiful remake.
Absolutely. And with that, guys, there you have it. Silent Hill 2 remake from top to bottom. I want to thank you guys for listening. Of course, I want to thank my regular world guest, Philip Church of philipchurch.com. But before we go, guys, we got a little extra for you, a little icing on the cake, a little cherry on top with what we call the gem of the week. But guys, before we talk gems, a word from their sponsors.
Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is our go-to tool for remote podcast recordings. What's great is that you can record separate audio and video tracks, and it's all backed up on a secured cloud, so you never lose your hard work. Even better, it's easy to use, and there's nothing to download. So go to Zencastr.com, Zencastr.com, and use promo code Art of the Beholder to get 30% off your first 3 months with a pro account.
And we're back, and it's time to talk gems. I have 2 quick ones. They're very Silent Hill 2 adjacent, very appropriate for the show.
Take mine, aren't you?
We may overlap. I don't know. Probably not on the first one. Yeah, because I want to talk about it a little bit. And that the first one is a different video game franchise called Little Nightmares. It's a fun, essentially 2.5 kind of 3D scroller, mostly left to right, a little bit up and down, but it's there's no dialogue in the game, and it's the title is very appropriate because it's Little Nightmares, because there's little like scary elements throughout the game, but it's very easily digestible compared to something like Silent Hill 2. Definitely check it out later this year. They're already on Game 2, but later this year, they will release the 3rd installment of the franchise, Little Nightmares 3, and that one is co-op, so you can play with your partner or friend or brother, sister, whoever. The other one is over the break. I did watch Nosferatu. Was it that? Is it that one?
Yep.
Okay. And I want to, before you go on a little mini review, I want to say to the good people, it was very good. I wanted to love it. I unfortunately did not. I liked it a lot. It almost got there. I think I need subsequent viewings of it. But with my first viewing, I actually want to give you guys a piece of advice. I think this is one of those films that it's a challenge of when expectations meet reality, because I went into it being like, oh, Eggers, Nosferatu, this is going to be effing epic. This is going to be the scariest thing since, the original Nosferatu. I thought it was going to be great, in other words. And I realized I went into it with the wrong expectations. Here's the correct one, because this is an art house film through and through. It's an art house film, and you should not go into it wanting just a scary movie like Smile 2 or something. You should go into it saying to yourself, you want a gothic romance with supernatural elements, including creatures like the vampire. And there are scary moments and even horrific sequences, but it's not a scary movie like we've come to know in 2025.
Not even in the same vein as his other horrors.
Right, like
It's
The
not even like
Witch.
The Witch. Yeah, it's
Right.
very different because that genuinely had a different kind of feel to it.
It is
I will
very,
agree with
very
this.
good.
I
Yes.
do think the expectations is very important.
Yeah, it's very, very good. It's sometimes great. The cinematography, the direction, spellbinding, but you're going to feel like there's something missing if you go into it with the wrong expectations.
That almost makes me want to mention a different horror movie that I watched recently that was also very artistic, yet very cool and unique in a way. I'll just throw it out there. It's called A Dark Song. It's a woman who has lost her child, who trying to get somebody who is basically a sort of practicer of the occult to do this very intense, very dangerous ritual with her, and all the crazy things that kind of go along with the fact that this occultist is, if you kind of think about the type of person who does this, or the things that a supposed actual occultist might see that might make him kind of a crazy asshole. So it's actually has a good amount of psychological horror on top of the fact that it does actually deliver on some kind of supernatural stuff. So that was a cool recent stream for me. The movie's not that old either, but it's called A Dark Song, cool horror. My other main gem, I will say, since I just threw A Dark Song in there since we sort of co-did Nosferatu, Secret Level. Holy crap. Yeah, give it a while. I thought it was worth it. There's enough good episodes in there, and I'm just me. You're going to like different stuff than me, so you might love more or different episodes, but I think it's worth a watch.
Guys,
stuff.
check it out. We're all different. Check it out. And if you like that, don't forget to check us out at noverdayproductions.com. You can follow us at _Novo_day and days to eat, and at AOTB.podcast and at AOTB podcast, no dot. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the things. We appreciate all the love. And if you guys want to get in touch with Philip Church, you can do so by checking out his website, philipchurch.com, and getting an inquiry to touch base and work on a project and hire him for his services. That's Philip Church with one L, philipchurch.com. And if you'd like to sponsor our little love child or be on the show, you can reach out to us at novadayproductions@gmail.com. So until next time,
1, 2, 3, 4.
you guys know what to do. We'll see you in the next one. But until then, be good to each other. And as always, good luck and Godspeed. We love you.
Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Novo Day Productions. Created by Novo Day and Theodore T. Buckingham. Written, directed, produced, and edited by Novo Day and the NDP Collective. Starring Philip Church of philipchurch.com. That's Philip with one L. Alexandra Parsons of alexandraparsons.com. ALEXANDRA-PARSONS.com. With special contributions by Theodore T. Buckingham. Music by A Company, Instagram handle A_CO_music_. Logo design by Tom Justice of thejusticecompany.com, JESTUS. Thank you again for listening. All rights reserved. Are you ready to elevate your style and make a lasting impression in fashion? Ready for change? To find the best you? Whether it's creating stunning designs or crafting the perfect wardrobe, AP Design is here to transform your vision into reality. From everything from sustainable goods to personal consulting, Alexandra Parsons of AP Design aims to bring innovation and elegance to your every project. So let her help you stand out with ideas that are bold, timeless, and uniquely yours. To get started, you can go straight to her shop with the link below in the show notes, or you can book a consultation at alexandra-parsons.com and let your new life start today. That's Alexandra, Alexandra, Parsons, Parsons.com. Because great design isn't just seen, it's felt.